Hey, it's digital charcuterie, and it's depending where you are. It could be Saturday night, it could be Sunday morning. For us, it's both. We're time traveling right now.
That's right. We're
I'm Andrew
pals of Bishop.
Fantasia, and look who's with me.
Hey, folks, how you going? That's the Meeple Monkey.
Welcome
Been a
back, sir.
been a long time since we had one of these chats. So yeah, it's good to get back.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been a long wait for Marvel United Multiverse, right? And we've been killing time. You've been doing so many great gameplay videos. I mean, you and the homebrew community, in the time between the end of the last Kickstarter campaign, you guys have basically created like 4 other Kickstarter campaigns and brought them to fruition and tested them.
Yeah.
So a lot's happened.
Yes, it's sure. Like I was actually looking at like my storage solution for all the homebrew stuff that I've been sort of printing out, and I'm like, oh man, this is it. It's more than like a season's worth of the regular Marvel United stuff. I'm like, oh man, I didn't sort of take this into account when planning out, where I'm going to store the miniatures and where I'm going to store the cards and stuff. So luckily, I didn't throw out any of the old boxes. Like that was the plan, and because I condensed everything down for the regular season 1 and 2 into a reasonable amount of boxes, but I just couldn't bring myself to throw out the other ones, and I thought, oh, maybe I'll use them for like Marvel Champions, and so I sort of kept them, and now I'm like, yep. Every time I print out a new batch of homebrew stuff, I'm like, yep, look, put them in this box. All right, put them in this box.
Yeah.
And I haven't even done all like there's so many people's homebrew stuff that I'm like, oh yeah, I want to do like Nelly Nell's Naruto stuff or his Castlevania stuff, or and I haven't touched that stuff. I haven't printed it out or anything like that. But yeah, like I know I want to, but I'm like, oh man, where am I going to store that? So
I know.
Yeah.
If Dave, the version architect, I mean, he's such a wizard with the Photoshop. Like, I'm sure if he had the access to like the right cardboard, he could make some killer like One Piece United boxes and just put that art on it.
Yeah, you know what? I think I mean Dave can probably sort of chime in if he watches this, in the comments or if he jumps in. But I think originally when he was talking about, or when he was planning his Age of Apocalypse stuff, I think he wanted to be able to like produce files for a box or something like that, so you could store it all in like its own sort of expansion box sort of thing. Yeah, that's like a distant memory I've got of like, I think that's what he was talking about originally, sort of thing. So yeah.
Nice. So that guy better be working for CMON within the next like couple years.
Yeah, that's right. He totally should. He's definitely got the chops for it in terms of the design and the graphic design as well. He's done some really good stuff. Yeah. In fact,
he's seamless.
Yes, it's so good. Like that InDesign template that he's got is beautiful, and he just recently I've just posted them up like onto my Google Drive and stuff, but just finalized. I don't know if you remember a while ago we did the Upstarts. I think it was like one of my first dabbles into homebrew. So over time, Kanji, Derek, from Kanji Studios, who's been doing tons of great the villain designs and that sort of thing, he had started commissioning art for all these different upstarts, because I think he started with like Sienna Blaze, and that's what sort of like, through researching her, I thought, oh, let's do some upstarts and that sort of thing. And so he's been doing all the art for them. I think for that Rogues Gallery as well, he did a whole bunch of those. So we've put those together, and I've been able to sort of like finally have all the art to make a really nice looking upstarts version. And Dave had to like completely design a brand new template for a dashboard to fit them all on and all that sort of stuff, but it looks amazing now. So yeah, he's done a really good job with it. So we've just released it today, actually, just a couple of hours ago. So I'll have to do like a Facebook post or something and sort of like advertise it, something. But yeah, it's looking really good. So yeah, it's taken a while. It's taken about, I don't know, a year or so.
Yeah, because that Upstarts, I remember when you posted that was a while back now.
Yeah. I think they were like my second or third design sort of thing. So but yeah, they're looking good now. So yeah,
Beautiful.
Very cool.
Yeah, we got to keep ourselves busy while we wait and wait and wait for this multiverse campaign. And like I've said before, I'm keeping my eyes on your channel because I know like you're going to be one of the first to get it too. So I can't wait for that unboxing video to come out.
Hopefully. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'm hoping like shipping goes pretty smooth and all that sort of stuff. It's certainly sort of stretched out a bit, hasn't it? But I mean, that's in the world of Kickstarter and stuff. It hasn't really, like, it's been we've got away with it relatively smoothly, sort of thing. Like, this is not too much of a wait compared to plenty of others that I've had to wait for. So I'm kind of like, oh, it's only like several months late. That's on time, isn't it? So
yeah. From what I hear, this is par for the course. Like with X-Men, I remember we got spoiled. Like we got a year from the campaign to the mailbox, and in my area, we even had like a train strike while the delivery was happening. So I was there we go. But no huge delay, so it all ended up working out. But so now we have just a couple months left on the docket, and already, what do they do, Meeple Monkey? What do they throw at us?
There's a bit of a curveball, wasn't it? It was like a curveball with a bit of a batarang shape sort of thing.
Yeah. And now it's become this thing where it's like it's created a divide in a fandom that was, pardon the pun, so united before.
That's right. That's right. They've had to like rename the Facebook page for the fandom, but even that caused a divide, right? There was dissent back and forth and that sort of thing. It's an interesting one. I mean, we know what's funny too is that I've mentioned it like on a couple of my latest videos and stuff. And if you're one of the many folks on the Meeple Monkey Facebook community page, there's so many of us. I've voiced some opinions there. But I think because basically I've got sort of very mixed feelings. I was showing Andrew before. This was my notes for how I'm feeling. This little squiggly face here. But I think we mentioned, like, on one of our earlier videos, like back when we were sort of hypothetically sort of talking, we did like a top 5, like what we'd like to see, different IPs,
and
that sort of thing. And I think it was your number 1. Is that right? Your number 1 was DC United, and I remember being very, because it was all hypothetical at the time. I was like, oh well, and I think I mentioned, oh look, it's not my favorite, right? It wouldn't be my favorite sort of thing, but I was like, oh, that would be great. Wouldn't that be lovely? Oh yeah, yay for Andrew's top 1 sort of thing. And then it became a reality, and Meeple Monkey is not sure how to feel about it, sort of thing. But I mean, the thing is, really, it's been a reality since they dropped that hint. Well, you know what? Even before that, as soon as they like showed that they were sort of actively using the license for DC with Deceased, I think the writing was on the wall there, right? It was like, oh, so I've had a lot of time to process it, right? Really, if I'm being realistic, there's been a lot of time. Then they released that at the end. I think it was at the end of that campaign. They said like what's in the master plan or something like that, which was the United sort of sign off sort of thing. And it was like, oh, okay, well, it's happening, right? It's happening. And then now there's pictures, now we've got pictures. That's definitely happening. And I think the thing for me is, if I'm really, really super duper honest, it's that whole thing of like when like your sport, like you've got sporting teams, right? And you've got rivalries with other sporting teams. I remember here in Australia in the NRL, the National Rugby League, I'm a Roosters fan, Sydney Roosters fan, and I live in an area, and I had a mate who's a diehard Cronulla Sharks fan. And my favorite thing about the Cronulla Sharks was that they had 0 premierships, 0 wins, right? So, the equivalent of a Super Bowl, 0. Never won it. And it was really funny because like colleagues of mine would buy, because you could get mugs, right? Like coffee mugs of the different teams with the listed premierships on them. And it was our funniest thing ever that we bought our friend a thing with Cronulla Sharks mug, and it had premierships 0. And it was like it's the funniest thing, right? So, and it was always just like every year you could sort of rib them and go, oh, you know, you didn't win this year, sort of thing. And then one year they did win. And while everyone was really, really happy about that in the neighborhood I live in, because it's a Cronulla Sharks area, it made me feel really sad that like I couldn't rub it in anymore. And like, so it's this sort of selfish thing of like, you know, lots of people are really happy, and you know that it's like a good thing, but it's like, oh, so it's like with with Marvel United, it's like I loved that Marvel United or Marvel has these cool things, and like DC, it's like, well, sad for you, you don't have it, but that's because you're DC and you're not as cool as Marvel, right? But that's a very selfish way to look at it, sort of thing. And so you know, so there's that side of thing where I'm like, oh, I was, you know, I see DC getting all these cool things, and now all the DC fans are going to be able to run around for the next year, enjoying this big fun campaign. And you know, because that's the other thing too. You these Kickstarter campaigns, they're fun to jump in. You get to be part of the community. Everyone's talking about how excited, what characters they want, and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that whole bar humbug thing of like, oh, I'm a Marvel fan, and I wanted to, you know, be more excited about Marvel stuff and that sort of thing. So I think that there was certainly, especially like my initial like visceral reaction was like, oh no, DC are getting to enjoy themselves, sort of thing. But that's a very you know, nasty, negative, you know, that's like primitive brain, me monkey in the back of his head, sort of thinking that. But if I'm honest, there was a bit of that, right? But you know, the thing is, and you know what, I probably wouldn't be so I'd probably still be wallowing that if I hadn't met you, because your enthusiasm for DC, and like, you know, those videos you did where you like showed what all the different possibilities the different seasons of DC could have and all that sort of stuff was really infectious. You know, like it was you know, so it was really great to see how excited you were for all of those sorts of things, and so I know, you know, I can see for so many people how exciting this is going to be, let alone the people who who are just regular rational people and can enjoy Marvel and DC at the same time, where it doesn't have to be a like, you know, like, yeah, struggle against each other, sort of thing. So so that's the thing. Like it is really exciting, and as a United fan, like a, you know, that game system fan and fan of that team, Andrea and the guys who have worked so hard to create this excellent system, you just know that they're going to like be able to like flex their design chops and show off all new design features. Already everyone's getting excited about like the new symbology to make sort of some of the card plays, you know, like face up cards in the storyline have a little symbol to remind you of that and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, that's you know, there's a like the positives of it greatly overwhelm the, you know, the bar humbug, you know, Marvel versus DC sort of feelings that I've been having, sort of thing. I think so that was the initial thing, but the main thing that's keeping me like, you know, back and forth is really, and I, you know, I know I mentioned this before too, Dave. He's very hopeful that we will get Marvel, you know, future Marvel seasons. But I don't know. I feel like shifting to this IP. I don't know. I just, for me, I don't see them being able to shift back to Marvel after shifting to DC. I feel like once they go to DC, then they're kind of, you know, I guess there's the argument, oh, we could go back and forth between Marvel seasons and DC seasons, but I don't see that. I see them sort of going DC, and if there's enough interest, doing a follow-up DC season, and then from there, you know, if the system keeps going into maybe even other IPs and things like that. But I don't know. I feel like if they were going to continue with the Marvel stuff to try and sort of bring out, and that's a whole other conversation, you know, is there enough Marvel stuff? Certainly stuff I'd like to see, yes, but you know, is there enough marketable stuff? Although X-Men 97 might add some new things to it, but I don't know. I don't know if I've sort of, yeah, to me, the DC thing, the main thing I'm like, oh, sad about it is that it seems like a nail in the coffin of any more Marvel stuff. Apart from like, maybe one-off promos and things like that. So yeah. Anyway, I've probably rabbited on way too much, but yeah. So how? Look, I'm assuming you're feeling pretty good about it, but like, yeah, what are your thoughts about the whole where the game system's at and stuff?
Well, it's funny, man, because I was going through. I ended up with the same squiggly mouth emoji that you drew. that was my reaction too, coming at it from kind of a similar vein as you. So it's kind of funny how we both got to that destination of that emoji just from different paths. But when that April 1st announcement came and you saw that Jack in the Box and it's saying like, ooh, tomorrow, stay tuned for a big thing, and everybody's saying like, that looks like the Joker. It looks like we're finally getting that DC United, which, like you said, the writing has been on the wall for a while. We all kind of saw that this was hurtling towards this point. And when I saw this little teaser with the Jack in the Box, I remember my first sort of thought was, I kind of hope it's not DC United.
That blows my mind too, because I think, I don't know, because I think you mentioned this as well, that like, I think I was like, oh, Andrew's such a massive DC fan. And I think you sort of like corrected me and were like, oh, I'm not, I think did you prefer Marvel over DC slightly, or?
I kind of flip-flop. Like I prefer the Marvel cartoons and movies, but I also love the DC cartoons and I prefer DC's comics.
Right. Okay.
So I kind of go all over the place, but I do have like I kind of throw my love to both of them. But my mindset seeing this Jack in the Box was like, it was sort of what you said, like, oh, if this is DC, is that a nail in the coffin for Marvel? Because I really want a season 4. There's still so much that I want. And I, so I'm sitting there thinking like, if this is DC, then the chance of that season 4 might have just gotten a little lower. So I was just kind of like, oh, okay, maybe that's the Joker. Maybe this is a totally other game. Maybe this is Zombicide the Clown edition. I don't know. Let's just wait till tomorrow. And then sure enough, we get to the next day. And I mean, as much as I wanted it to kind of be something else, I got to admit, once I saw that United chibi art and I got to see, Superman and Wonder Woman in that art, I'm like, okay, this makes me happy. So it was on like a teeter-totter for a bit, and I'm still sort of, I haven't stopped teetering because I'm still at a point where I don't know, like if this DC campaign started tomorrow, I could say for a fact I don't think I'm financially comfortable enough to back it. Whereas in July, maybe. July is still
me too,
it's still a crapshoot. So I'll wait and see how I feel, because if this campaign comes out and it's beautiful and it's like everything I've dreamed of and it hits all the marks on our bingo cards from what I predicted and it's like everything I would want and I won't be able to afford backing it, then that's going to be a bummer. But
that's true.
Yeah, because it's just I'm watching this thing unfold and it's like, oh boy, look at all those toys I probably won't get to play with. Whereas if they had just sort of let it be not announced, but just kind of hinted like more Marvel will come in the future, and every time Dave talks about that as a certainty, it really, makes me happy.
It cheers me up.
Because it's like, okay, because we know there's that selfish. See, my selfishness doesn't come from hating DC. My selfishness comes from the collector part of my brain wants to finish all the loose ends that we still have.
Yeah.
So I'm like, no. The DC fans can wait. I have loose ends to tie up. Give me the rest of Alpha Flight. Give me, the leader. Give me Prowler. So there's all this stuff that's kind of left on the cutting room floor, and we're like, well, what about these characters? Like, these are not D-list characters. There's still some good ones. And now, while I haven't lost hope that we'll get it, I think it is going to be something. I feel like they may give us what we want, but they're going to get creative with how they give it to us. It might not be a full campaign anymore. It might be something like, here's just like a huge stretch goal box with 60 characters in it based on what everybody has wanted, and you can just back this if you want. It's not going to retail. It's just like a thing for Marvel United fans so that we won't lose money trying to make it a big thing to get new people coming in.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think because and they have they have shown that sort of flexibility before. Like, there's been weird little sort of like comic runs where they'll do a campaign with comics and then a bunch of promo figures, or they'll do like they've done that straight to retail Spider-Geddon box sort of thing. What did they did something recently with the Cthulhu Death May Die characters or something. Didn't they do something where they brought like a different game or something and they put some characters for that in there? So they have shown that like they don't necessarily always have to follow that strict thing of like we have to have a whole season sort of thing. So who knows? Yeah, it's all a bit but it's that sort of thing where that they can't say anything, confirm anything either way. Like they're not going to go, because as much as we want that reassurance that, hey, don't worry, there's going to be more Marvel coming later on. If they say that, then they're shooting themselves in the foot, because you might get a whole bunch of people that then just go, well, cool, I'm not going to drop any money on DC.
Exactly.
I'll wait until Marvel, and then whereas if we're all sitting there going, well, we might not get anything, like this might be our last chance sort of thing. Okay, we'll jump on this one. Yeah. So, and like I wish good luck to them either way. Like I don't want to be like, oh, how dare they do that? But it's just like realistically, business wise, it doesn't make sense to sort of, show their hand too much, sort of thing. So.
Yeah, and they've been good with that. They're very good at being sneaky.
Yeah. So, but I do because I really love that game that they've designed, sort of thing. So I really do want it to be successful for them, so that the Andrea and the team sort of get that reward for their efforts and stuff. Yeah, so wiggly face emoji.
We'll still be wiggly until July, and then we'll see how we feel. But it is, to your earlier point, it is cool just kind of thinking of, like you said, they get to stretch their muscles a bit when it comes to being developers and being designers. And, you see, like my favorite component in Marvel United has to be the villain dashboards. I just love the way they look. I love how they each kind of have their own little flair to it, depending on how different a villain is. And seeing Joker with a dashboard, and I don't even really care for the Joker. I think he's an overrated character. Hot take, but like seeing a dashboard with the Joker on it, kind of, it just made me think like, oh boy, there's so many great villains in DC. Like, what are their dashboards going to look like? How are they going to play? And more importantly, how is the team going to make this something a bit more creative than a copy paste, right? How is Aquaman going to be different from Namor? How is Darkseid going to be different from Thanos? What are they going to do to really differentiate these characters who, let's face it, we all know it's right there plain as day, can be pretty much one proxy for another, right?
Yeah, so absolutely, yeah.
There's a lot about this campaign just from a design standpoint that I'm sure like the people in the Discord, the homebrew people will have a field day with, because they're wondering like, how does this get pulled off? How do you make Superman in Marvel United where he doesn't feel OP, but he still feels like, hey, it's Superman. He's not going to go down easy, right? How's that design work?
Yeah. And already you've seen some different things like, and I guess like within Marvel United over the seasons, like they added whole new elements that seem to be like a theme for that season. So like with the mutant season, they sort of they had those, they sort of introduced the starting hand cards and things like that. And in this one, we're starting to see some things like flip cards or something like that, where I think Batman has some cards or something where you can flip the card to trigger a thing or something like that. So there might be a whole realm of design space there where a lot of the characters just like just design wise in this season are going to sort of have that sort of stuff in them. I think the equipment is certainly going to be for those sort of gadget heroes and things like that. They'll be able to sort of like really play around with that as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting. Like you look at what they were able to sort of put in and shake up the system with season 3 in Marvel. Like, I suppose that's the biggest thing with season 3. Like, we haven't seen a lot yet, but I didn't really notice as much sort of like a major thing across the heroes like we did see with the starting hand cards. But they spent the time like adding things like those team decks, and they added things like that PvP mode, or the new PvP mode and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, are we going to see like that sort of stuff, like where they sort of really play around with the system as a whole, or yeah, like certainly there's that thing with Joker now where they're tying like BAMs and things can change depending on whether they're under pressure,
Yeah,
and that
that's
sort of
cool.
thing as well. So that might be a thing that sort of that creeps into it. So yeah, but yeah, certainly that's the really, for me, that's like a massively exciting thing, is just more villains, more heroes, more content, which is crazy because it's like already with all this homebrew stuff, it's like, where do I keep it all? But,
I know, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's what's cool about that too is it's not outside the realm of possibility now. When you look at all the stuff that has been sort of, it's become mainstream Marvel United, and it wasn't in season 1, like anti-heroes, starting hand cards, now these flip mechanics that we see in DC. It wouldn't be totally outside the realm of possibility. And maybe some people might hate this, but if
I already hate it. It's
that's it. Stamp it. It's done. It's out the door. If a Marvel United season 4 was to happen, and they wanted to make it a full season, and they wanted to get new people into it, they could theoretically do a core box for that season that is just sort of a core box of season 1 heroes like Spider-Man and Captain America and Hulk, updated with these new mechanics, with flip cards, with better decks, with starting hand cards. Maybe, there's a purple Venom mini in there. They kind of take everything they've learned and stick that on as a fresh coat of paint. So we get kind of season 1 2.0, and then all the rest of the campaign, all the expansions that come with it, are fresh new things that will get the old fans excited, while also having new fans be like, ooh, look at all these other characters. Sure, yes, please. Let's get this Kang variant that nobody's seen before. Let's get this and that, and Whirlwind and Mandarin and whatever. And that way they can kind of have their cake and eat it too, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a good point. Like, and I sort of see, like, as you were talking about, I was thinking, oh, yes and no with that, because for example, Dave has talked about we keep name dropping poor old Dave, but he's talked about, like, he thinks like a great hook, because this is the thing about season 4, right? It's like, what is the hook? Like, what's it going to be? What are you going to center it around and stuff? And a big one that's in the zeitgeist now and stuff is X-Men 97. It's well received. It's exciting, getting people excited again and that sort of thing. So that's but and he was saying that, I was thinking, okay, but that's essentially like the X-Men core box from season 2 sort of thing, because a lot of those guys are pretty much like the look of them and the, like, so the uniform design and the main roster there are kind of like your core, mostly sort of core ones from that animated series sort of thing. But he did, he pointed out there's characters like Gyrick and a bunch of the villains were sort of different, and you could sort of have maybe a new version of, you could have Morph, with his animated uniform sort of thing. You could have like maybe Nightcrawler, a bunch of different ones that sort of look slightly different. Maybe your Magneto with the the big M and stuff.
Yeah.
So that, and that's that same thing of like, well, there's a perfect chance to sort of bring those sort of like ones that were from a previous core, but sort of update them or whatever. But the only thing I see with that is it's like, okay, well, let's say they do that one with the Avengers, you know, they're new Hulk and a new this and update them all. But then because I feel like they love having, and this is Simon, they love having that original set, that Marvel United, the core set, because that's what, you know, they have these core sets that stay in retail, and that's a big strength of them. If you brought out another core set with this campaign that is this like a duplicate set of characters, that's like a tricky space for where does that original core set belong then? Do they phase that core set out? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
that's an interesting thing. It's like, oh, I kind of don't see them replacing their core set stuff, but I don't know. I'm not a business head, so I don't know if
yeah.
what makes
It'd be
sense to me.
tricky. It'd be
Yeah,
tricky. I can see them doing it if it's not a one-to-one adapt out of the core set.
Yep.
If they, you know, they replace some characters, if they go for Iron Man and Captain America and Spider-Man and Wolverine and Storm and Captain Marvel and maybe like Venom, and then throw some like a villain from each core box if they want. Like they could put Magneto and Red Skull, whatever. If they just kind of shake it up and do that, they might be looking at something where they don't have to worry about phasing things out. But yeah, I agree. I'm not a business guy either. I don't know what what logistics that would entail. Who knows? That might be like the most difficult thing for CMON. Whereas if they just make a season 4 with all new stuff, it might be way easier. And if so, bring it on.
Yeah, that's right.
We need Prowler, damn it.
Yep. We need Richter. We need Leech. We need Leech. Come on.
I was just playing the other day, and I was playing against, I think it was Baron Zemo, and I haven't played against Zemo in like almost 2 years. So I forgot all of his henchmen, and one of them was Prowler. And I'm like, the art is right there.
We've already got it. Yeah.
So it's only a matter of time, I hope.
That's So we'll fingers crossed. But in the meantime, we've at least got DC, so we can be excited about that. Check it out. You know, deal with our issues, and we'll see how we go. Yeah.
Do you have a DC villain or hero that's like you're really curious what they'll be like, or it's like the one that would get you excited if they do it right in the game?
I don't really the problem is I don't really know enough about them, sort of thing. I never really got into them as much. There was one, as you were talking about it, like, oh, what would this character be like? I think would be really interesting would be the Riddler.
Yes!
Like, I'd be really interested to see what they're like. Like, would you have a little, you know, like Legion, how he had that little deck of cards that sat on his thing? Would you have a little deck of cards and each one has a riddle and you have to solve it? It's like he's like a what do they call that series of games? Escape room games, you know, the ones where, like, he's like a legacy character where like you have to cut up you have to cut things up, and you can only play him once because once you've solved his riddles, you can't play it again. And then you've also wrecked your box and everything because you've cut out holes and stuff in it.
You have to mail away for another Riddler.
So I think maybe Simon shouldn't take my ideas for how to do a Riddler, but yeah, I think, you know, however you do him, you know, like I think you could do some really interesting stuff with him. The only other one that comes to mind recently is with Big Head Chibis. They've been doing a bunch of DC sort of heroes and stuff recently, and one that I recently discovered just sort of like through looking up random heroes and stuff was this guy called the Ventriloquist or something. And
you
he's
just named my 2 favorite Batman villains.
Really?
Yeah.
So I think he'd be really, I don't know how you do him either, but I think he'd be really cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. Those are literally like, of all the Batman villains, those are my 2 favorite. Those are the 2 I would most want to see.
Well, we are like mind melding. That's pretty cool. Yeah. So I think they're the like Riddler. I think that's the one I'd be really interested to see what they do mechanically, and also just I just think that Ventriloquist is just such a cool sort of gimmick sort of thing. Like, I'd just like to see him, even just the model, you know.
Yeah.
Big Head Chibis did a good model, good job with that too. Very, very cool. So
awesome.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's I guess speaking of X-Men '97 as one of those possibilities for a core set, I think uh, we were going to talk about X-Men '97. Is that right?
Yeah.
Part of our thingy, yeah. Yeah, it's been that's been pretty exciting. That's been pretty exciting. I've I don't know. I think. Well, what's like? Were you watching it back in the day, like when it was when it was airing back in the '90s?
I was, yeah, I
Yeah.
was. It was for some reason where I lived, it was harder to catch X-Men. So when it was on, it was kind of not a rarity, but it was a big deal. It's like, ooh, I found X-Men. Like I was too young to really know like how to work the TV guide and whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
I was obsessed with it and Spider-Man though, and those and like the whole Marvel animated universe was my whole childhood kind of revolved around seeing it like just come to fruition. And of course, it was hard to see those shows unless you knew when exactly they were going to be on.
Yeah, that was the thing, right? But like,
Yeah.
yeah, that was like television was only on like when when it was on sort of thing. So you had to, yeah, you had to get the TV guide out and find
Yeah.
out when things were on. Yeah,
And
yeah,
if
yeah,
you
yeah.
miss it, you miss it. And if you're lucky, the video store will have like a couple episodes on a VHS tape. And
Yeah.
that was how I got by. I was like, oh, wow, 3 episodes of Spider-Man, and it comes with like a bonus episode of Iron Man. All right, this is my birthday
Yeah,
present.
that's right.
So, but X-Men was like definitely a treat every time it came on. And even though I definitely didn't get around to seeing every episode back in the day, there were a lot that I got to experience. And like when I rewatched it as an adult, I just remember thinking like, oh, I remember this. I remember that. I don't remember this. This is
Yeah.
new. So it was cool getting to relive that. And now here we are again, reliving it even more. Did you watch it growing up?
Yeah, I think my memory of it is that I think the I think I got into I think I was getting into I'd either just gotten into comics or it was right around that time because it sort of hit at that perfect time. So I don't know if it's what started me reading the comics or vice versa sort of thing, but yeah, it was around that. Was it like 93-ish or something like that when it started? Or
Yeah, late 92, early 93.
Yeah, that's it. That makes sense because I remember my dabbling with the comics was I was reading them around about the time when Executioner's Song was happening. So that's kind of like my era of the comics, and I really don't think I read them much past Executioner's Song. Like, so I bought I bought that whole series of crossovers, and probably followed a couple. I probably followed X Factor, who turned out to be like my favorite back then, and a few of the other ones. I've probably followed them for a few issues later. And then I had I obviously was watching the cartoon, and I must have watched at least a couple of seasons of that because like I've been watching them. I watched them all again recently, and it sort of got to a point where I'm like, oh, I don't really remember this happening, or so that I must maybe I don't know if in Australia if we got all the seasons. Like sometimes we'd get a few seasons and then like the show would stop sort of thing or whatever. But
yeah,
so I remember that. So and I remember collecting the comic of the the animated series. Well, I think they had a comic that tied in with it, and
cool.
I was only reminded of this the other day when I think someone posted a screenshot of one of them, and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember actually reading these comics as well. And so I think I was reading sort of that Executioner's Run, and I read a number of these ones based on the animated show, and yeah, so so it's like some of my because like I was saying, I only read I think I read up to there was a bit where Jean Grey and Cyclops get married at some point, and around about there I stopped reading. And I think had stopped by the time Age of Apocalypse had started, and that whole thing. But my core memories of the X-Men really, I think, come from that animated series sort of thing, and so that's why when Marvel United season 2 dropped, and they're all in their animated series costumes and stuff. I was like, this is targeted at me, sort of thing, So yeah, it was cool. So
yeah,
I think it's certainly our age group, right? It's certainly
100%. That show and the game and the show have been just like laser focused on us, like we're being spoiled. It's true. You bring up a good point. Like there's with these cartoons, with X-Men and with Spider-Man, I remember there's points where it seemed like, I guess at a certain point the show would go into syndication. It would start rerunning its old episodes. So you would see the first season or two constantly.
Yes.
And then the later seasons, that's where it's like, ooh, I don't remember this. I don't remember Jubilee's Fairy Tale Theater. I've never seen that before. Like, what's going on? And same with Spider-Man. Like those later seasons where he's going through the multiverse with like Madam Web, those were so hard to catch on TV. Right? Usually they just give you season 1 stuff where it's like, hey, he's got the symbiote. So it was getting to see those new ones was like, kind of unlocking these new chapters of this story. Right. And now that's exactly what the show is doing, which is incredible. I actually brought something here for show and tell here.
Oh, sweet.
A little bit. I have my binder from back in the day when my dad used to take me collecting trading cards and such. And there was a series. Where is it? It's right here. It starts here on this page.
Oh, yep.
And this series was the 4 big Marvel cartoons from that era. So there's the Spider-Man and X-Men, and then Fantastic Four and Iron Man, and it just covers the cartoons. So if the character was not big in the cartoon, like Green Goblin, he's not here because he's in the cartoon not as much.
Yeah.
Right? But this was like my pride and joy back in the day because I'm like, wow, these are all the characters I know, as opposed to when they, the other trading cards would be like, hey, here's Demo Goblin. And I'm like, I don't know who that is, but okay. Right? So this was kind of like treating us, especially as the cartoon fans. And it was a lot of fun. This was how I first learned who Iron Man was.
Those are beautiful. Like they're like big full color, like they're not shy on showing the art, they're not hiding the art behind a lot of other stuff. Yeah, that's
exactly. Cool. That's what I loved about those cartoons as well, was how just the colors, they're just like, hey, we don't care. Vulture's going to be neon green. Deal with it. I'm like, okay, let's do it.
Yeah, super vibrant. Yeah, no, it's been real good. Like this, this season, like they've really sort of, especially early out the gate, they really sort of hit the nostalgia. I think the number one thing was keeping that music, or or at least it's slight. Because that's actually the other thing too. Going back and watching the stuff on Disney or whatever it was that when we've been sort of doing the rewatch, getting ready for this. I sort of maybe have slight memories of like them changing the theme music in the last season or whatever, but it's super jarring, where like they go from that just the classic, to like I don't know, it's like this weird synthesized, this different version of it in the later season or later seasons. I can't remember how many that it changes for, but so when this one started up and it was like the original, like the classic music, it's like, oh, so good. It's so good.
They knew exactly how to find that sweet spot in our brain. And the animation has like, it would have been so easy for them to go like a Dragon Prince route and kind of half CGI it. And I'm sure there was temptation to do that, but thankfully cooler heads prevailed. And we got something that looks pretty close. It's obviously slicker. It's cleaner.
Yes,
it's almost got an anime feel to it with the way some of the camera movements are. That is different from what it used to be, and I dig it. I think it looks beautiful.
Yeah, it's like they've taken everything that like works about like what we wanted from our nostalgia sort of thing of the look of it, but like just done it in. I guess they've done it with the modern techniques of better animation and smoother, all that sort of stuff. So it's the perfect marriage of that, right? So yeah. I had so I've got little notes on each of the episodes, and that first episode, I've written down, like the first thing I wrote was it was like the perfect nostalgia hit, right? Because it was like it, even like those first few sort of shots and stuff where they're showing the streets, like the abandoned warehouse and all, it perfectly captured the setting of what it felt like in that first, those original series sort of thing, and it had that, like you said, the color, that theme song, and then like the dialogue, like they got it, like they had all the, like, the cheesy one-liners and stuff as they're running in, and like Bishop's like, take this, blah blah blah, how, have it served back, and like and then Storm, like they perfectly got her like theatrical overacting, like, I am the Winter Queen, and Bishop's like, watch out, and she's like, oh, Bishop, you must do, and it's like, no, like, Storm, like, calm down, but like that's how she speaks, and like, because she's like a goddess sort of thing, and like, it totally captured that cheesy vibe of how they all spoke and that sort of stuff, and it was really, really good. I think that was, they did a really good job of, like, pulling us in with that nostalgia sort of thing. What did you think of that first episode?
The first episode was beautiful, and it hit all the right notes for me. It was a great reintroduction to the X-Men. I just thought the first time we see the X-Men on this new show should be a big deal. Like, it shouldn't just be them walking out of a door. Okay, team, let's have a coffee and discuss what's like, right? Like, let's make it a moment when they come in. They did. Boy, did they ever. And I love how the gift of time and hindsight has not been squandered in this show, because among probably hundreds of other things that other fans could name, one of the many things that I think time and hindsight has gifted to us is, back then Cyclops was nobody's favorite character, but now we've all grown to be like, what, Cyclops is pretty cool. There's a reason he's the leader. This is a cool character. And do they ever lean into that?
Well, hold on, I'll stop you there. Since I didn't continue with the comics, I have never emotionally matured past the point where I thought Cyclops was a dweeb. So for me, it was like, oh, what's going on? But it was very cool. One of my other notes is, like, Cyclops, he was using his, because that's the thing, like, with Cyclops, right? He's got these, like, super powerful laser eyes, and he was always blasting everyone with them, and that's all he would do, is just blast people with them. And all it would do was people get knocked over, and no one would, like, die for the, like, what was he hitting him with? Like, warm hug rays or something? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
it was a Care Bear stare.
Yeah, it's that classic thing of, action superhero things where, like, everyone's just, like, launching these super powerful punches, but no one ever seems to get taken out by them until all of a sudden you decide that the fight's over, and okay, that's the one that knocks him out, sort of thing. So he's always, like, blasting things, but unless it's a robot, right? That's why the Sentinels were perfect, because they were like, he could go all out and, like, do all sorts of destructive stuff to Sentinels, because it didn't matter because they were robots. But, like, he was like, I loved how he was using his things to move. Like, he was, like, blasting the ground so he could slide across, and like, so good. And then you're right, like, they, and of course his, like, superhero landing thing, which was amazing. That was, like, so good. But, like, they lent into that, like, leadership aspect of him and really highlighted that. And I think that was like you said, that was a great thing to introduce him, is to not go into all the other, stuff where he's very emotionally repressed, passive aggressive jerk. They highlighted his command things, and and they, big set piece. He comes in, he leads the charge. He's doing all the things. Like, that was a great way to set him up, and then if you want to start breaking him down again, and investigating his inner flaws and all that sort of stuff, like, you can do it, but you do it from a point of, like, start him on a pedestal, and then you can sort of, like, play with the interesting things of, like, oh, here's this guy on a pedestal, and, like, oh, but isn't it interesting that he's got these different flaws, and if you look closer and stuff, that was a really smart thing of, like, and I think that was with the whole thing, right? They made the whole team look really, throughout the whole episode, like, they just were like, oh wow, okay, these are the X-Men, and they are kick butt powerful. You know, like they're a great unit. They're working well together. All this sort of stuff. And then it allows you to tease out all the melodrama as the season and as different problems come in, sort of thing. So yeah, it was really good. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you can see all the faults as you look closer at them. And I thought the symmetry was beautiful, where your very, very first episode was, hey, here's this new character, this new mutant Jubilee, and we got to save her from Sentinels. And now you kind of do the same thing, but with Sunspot.
Yeah, that was great.
Brilliant. So yeah, they draw that parallel there. It makes it feel, it's the best way to make you feel like you're back on comfortable, familiar territory. And then to top it all off, I got, like, it was a nice treat to, I've been hearing about Executioner, Executioner's song, like you mentioned, a big comic story. I've been hearing his name for years. It's the first time I've ever seen Executioner in anything. So it was nice to see him.
Yeah, well, you know what, and back to your point about the Jubilee and Sunspot thing, I've also really liked and appreciated how they used Jubilee as that bridge. Like, she was the one welcoming him in, like bringing him in, sort of thing. Couldn't say welcoming, but yeah. So that was really good. But Executioner, now, the only thing is with that. So like this Executioner song that, and the only reason I can say this is because recently with Marvel United, I went back and read some of this stuff, because it was only vague memories of it and stuff. But I don't think this character Executioner, unless I'm wrong, has anything to do with Executioner's song.
Oh, wow.
Even though they spell the name the same way and everything, that story was about Strife coming back, or Strife arriving or something, and dressing up like Cable and like almost assassinating Professor X, and then all the X teams were like hunting after him, and then he kidnapped Cyclops and Jean and blah 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 blah, and they all fought. Strife and Cable and Strife fought each other and stuff. But it didn't have anything to do with some random like freedom of humanity guy blasting Storm's powers away, or anything like that. So he that was why it was really interesting when they said, "Oh, my name's Executioner." I'm like, okay, how are you spelling that? Is that like the So that was it. But I don't know if maybe like I didn't read enough around that little crossover series to know that he somehow ties in with that story as well. But because I think there is a comic story where like that happens in the comics, where Rogue loses her. I keep saying Rogue. Storm loses her powers, and it's a similar sort of thing. So I don't know if he shows up. I don't know if he shows up in that. But yeah, like he was like something new to me. Like I didn't know who he was or what was going on there.
Oh, yeah, interesting.
Okay. Yeah. Huh. So, but hopefully, more knowledgeable people might be able to let us know what the deal is with him. Like, is he just made up for the show, or like I don't know. I'm not sure.
Well, hopefully he takes off. He becomes mega popular, and he becomes a core box villain in season 4.
Bingo. Yep. Actually, I think that was one of the ones Dave mentioned when he was talking about doing an X-Men 97 callback.
Perfect.
He said, put Executioner in, which makes sense, right? He was like a key moment in that opening thing. So yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I think they did a really good job, like opening, because it was a 2-episode release, wasn't it? They opened with 2.
It was. And
I think that's what like solidified it for me. So that first episode was for all the reasons you said, like just it was such a good establishing episode and really good. And then the next one to follow up, and just how like I just found that one, like the first one was so fun and like you said, familiar. And I think the showrunners have talked about how they really wanted the first, they start us off, making us feel all welcome and nostalgic and feeling, and then they're going to shake things up as they go, sort of thing. But that second episode, like, and especially because we were able to sort of follow straight into it because we were so excited after seeing the first one, it hit so many big themes of the X-Men and allowed for like, it was such like those powerful moments where Magneto has, does that big speech in front of the who are they, the not the UN, but some
yeah.
tribunal or something.
Yeah, I forget what they're called. Yeah.
Yeah, like that whole episode, the how it builds up and kind of sums up the X-Men's whole duality sort of thing of that warring philosophy of Magneto's and Xavier's and it was really impressive to me how they sort of captured that whole thing in one episode, like from bringing Magneto back and having him take over the team, and then like the trust issues of the team, and then him sort of proving himself by not retaliating, and just and that big speech at the end, like just and then Rogue's man, that's like the third time. Storm. I don't know why I've got them confused in my head, but I think it's because social media, everyone's been talking about Rogue, right?
Yeah.
Rogue. But Storm's like, and this is where you had to establish her theatricalness, where she's like, I can't feel the wind, and like all of it, just it created such a big moment, sort of thing. I thought it was like, a really grandiose sort of like realization of like how powerful their themes can be, sort of thing. So it was like the first episode was like nostalgia hit, and second episode was like, oh wow, this is going to be good television. Like it's going to be television that can hit those like themes in a really mature way that we've sort of got used to now over time with like great drama shows and that sort of stuff. It's like, yeah. So I thought that was really good.
I love that you use that word mature, because that really does feel like that's what the show did right off the cuff once season 2 came. Episode 2. By the way, Diversion Architect is watching in the chat. Hello,
hey,
hello,
Dave.
welcome aboard.
We may have name dropped you several hundred times.
Yeah, just a few hundred times, just to throw some pedigree into this video.
Yeah, that's right.
But the maturity, the learning curve of maturity got really steep, and I was there for it. But because I'm so unfamiliar with the comic books, there was a bit of a shock to the system, not in a bad way, not in a what have they done, but just in a complete utter shock way. And once episode 2 was over, I messaged my friend Ryan, who does the Infinity Rewatch podcast with me, and I'm like, Ryan, did Rogue and Magneto just do what I think Rogue and Magneto just did? And he's like, yep. So it hit me. I'm like, whoa, I've grown up now. This is it.
They were just in there workshopping his new costume design, right? That's it, just
right? Tailoring things.
That's what we'll tell Gambit. That's what we'll tell Gambit. Oh, poor Gambit. But yes. And it's interesting though, because I think like it hasn't been a perfect. I shouldn't say it hasn't been a perfect season, but like for me, it hasn't been a perfect experience, which is interesting. Like starting with the next episode, right? And I wonder, because so the first 2 episodes, like I'm aware that there's probably some themes there from comics and stuff, but when I got back into X-Men with Marvel, and I discussing with people and being excited about the X-Men again and stuff, and talking to people how I liked X Factor and I liked Havoc and that sort of thing, someone recommended, if you're interested in that, you should read the original X Factor, because it's a very different team and all this. And I was like, oh really? What? Because to me, X Factor was just that government team with Havoc and all those guys.
Yeah.
And then I went back and read the original X Factor and was blown away by the fact that X Factor was like the original X-Men team, who after they like retired from being the X-Men decided to be the X-Men again, but in this weird sort of fake Ghostbusters way, where they like were trying to rescue mutants by persecuting them and all sorts of weird stuff. But I read that season, and that's how I got into Cameron Hodge and all that sort of stuff. But I've got off track. I'm like, what was I talking about? X Factor? But with this, through reading that, like I sort of discovered some of the different arcs as they sort of arrived at different sort of famous crossover points and things like that, big comic events. And some of them were like the Genosha one, and another one was Inferno, which featured the Goblin Queen and all this sort of stuff. And so I'd sort of discovered that, and in fact, when she arrived, it was like X Factor were like the X-Men, and then like there were these new X-Men team with like Storm and Wolverine and these guys, and they all there was a big crossover event sort of thing, and they all fought Goblin Queen and stuff. But it was this big ongoing thing, and since the beginning of the X Factor comics, the Madeline Pryor was kind of already established, and even before that, and all this sort of stuff. So there was this whole sort of thing building up to it, and so this one, when I saw, especially that, I think it was the end of episode 2, that reveal of like, oh, Madeline Pryor's coming, because it's like, oh, there's this clone version and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I remember being, oh, that's going to be really exciting, and then I remember feeling like when watching it, because they squeezed it all into one episode, it felt like I just felt kind of like, oh, that felt really rushed. Like for them to go from like beginning of Madeline, like the Goblin Queen thing, to resolving it, to like straight into the Cable baby thing, all like in the one episode. Just I was like, whoa, that's like it's too squeezed sort of thing. And so I sort of wonder like, oh, is that just because like I'm familiar with that comic, so therefore I'm seeing all the cuts they've made, whereas I'm not familiar with whatever was going on in the first 2 episodes from comics. So that to me felt like it was, it played out naturally and organically, because that's just how they told that story. Whereas maybe if I was aware more of what was going on with that, I'd be like, oh, you've cut this and you've melded that and blah, blah, blah. Like, so I wonder if it's just that, that whole like, oh, I've read the books, sort of thing of like, oh, that episode didn't hit for me just because it felt too rushed because I knew the story already. Whereas if so had you read much about Goblin Queen before?
No, actually, I had never even heard of her until Marvel United, when people in the comments were saying, let's get Goblin Queen. And I'm like, oh, is that like a female Green Goblin? I've never heard of her. Like, that sounds cool. And I had no idea this character existed. I didn't even know there was a whole Jean Grey clone thing. Like, that was complete and utter news to me. So when this episode aired, and I'm watching, I'm like, oh, okay, there's a clone. And then she says the word Goblin Queen, and I'm like, oh, okay. I had no clue that she was like not only a character who existed, but that she was this classic of a character. When people were dropping her name on Kickstarter, I thought she was like a recent character, like Agent Venom or something.
Yeah. And so did that episode feel to you like it just felt like a regular episode, felt like a natural pace sort of thing to it? Or did it feel to you like it was like, oh, they tried to rush too much stuff into it, or that wasn't something that you noticed at all, sort of thing?
It didn't feel rushed. It felt, it felt kind of, and this was something I appreciated, I think, was it felt like the old cartoon where even though they'd have these big branching season-long arcs, you would get a lot of episodic stuff happening. Like, oh, in this episode, Sabretooth's going to show up, and then they deal with him, and then the next episode is something else. It just kind of felt like that, where, ooh, this is a Mr. Sinister episode, and they're going to use this gene thing as a catalyst for it. And even though they're not done dealing with Sinister for the remainder of the season, they're going to wrap up that gene clone thing. That's what.
So he's the arc that and you're right. Like that's and that's what I've sort of thought about is like the previous seasons. I think there's been a lot of this sort of stuff, but it's just I didn't notice it as much. There was definitely lots of episodes in the old series where they probably squeezed in whole storylines into single episodes just to sort of like draw from the comics and stuff, and so that's just something I hadn't I guess just for me, because I was familiar with that story, that one felt a bit rushed sort of thing. So I was like, oh, that was a bit sort of and I think Dave's I can't do multiple things at one time. But I think Dave's sort of echoing, it was a bit like for him. I think he's really invested in that story too. Like I think it was a bit quick sort of thing, but it was also really awesome to see them like bring that one to the screen and that sort of thing as well. So and I think that's it. I think like for me, because I knew it as a longer thing, if that had been an arc rather than the Sinister thing, like, and then the Sinister becomes an even bigger arc or something, like that would have felt more like what I was expecting or used to for me. But that's I realize it's totally a well, that's just from my perspective, sort of thing. It's and it's not a knock on the show. I don't think the show, it was a bad quality or anything like that. I think it was just that I just, because again, everything in that episode was amazing. It was a great fight and big set piece battle and all that really cool sort of thing where she was like messing with their minds stuff. There was some amazing stuff in there, and I think I'm gonna have to go back and watch that one again, where I won't be sort of like just bothered by it's happening too quick sort of thing, and just enjoy it for what it is sort of thing. I think was good. And it's funny then because the next episode was a totally little filler sort of episode thing, but I didn't have a problem with that part of it, like that Jubilee and Sunspot, was it Jubilee, and they do the Mojo thing, because I mean that sort of perfectly felt like a little self-contained sort of thing, and I've got a soft spot for Mojo. But I guess the one thing with that one is I didn't really like how they, and I don't know if they did this much in the old series, but I didn't like how they kind of split two, almost felt like they had two different stories, could have been two separate episodes sort of thing, and they blended them, like they sort of cut them in half sort of thing. Like you got the Jubilee story and you got the Storm story with Forge. I think they were in the same episode, weren't they?
Yeah, they even had like a split in
title. Yeah, I think it even like the title was like a split title. It's almost like what you watch those kid shows, cartoons, and the episodes are so short they sort of have two in the one episode sort of thing.
Very 90s thing to do.
So. Yeah. But I really, the Jubilee one was super fun, and it was like you had I love how they sort of did the cartoon, the battle with Magneto and the cartoon and all that sort of, not the cartoon, the old arcade game and stuff. Although I wish, my memory of that is that he used to say X chicken, like he'd make fun, like one of his like lines when you were fighting Magneto at the end is he'd go X chicken, like he had a few lines, something about his shield or something like that, like magnet shield, I don't know, something, but one of the lines he would keep repeating over and over was X chicken, and we used to, like, my mates and I would just think that was so funny, and in fact we sort of insult each other sometimes, go X chicken. so like I wish like when she'd been fighting him he'd said X chicken. That would have been funny.
In fact there's in the arcade game there's an infamous thing where it's just like a bit of poor translation, where when Magneto shows up, he says, "Welcome to die."
Yes, yes. Welcome to die.
And I was like, "Oh, is he going to say welcome to die?" And they didn't sneak that in.
Yeah, that So this series goes from a 10 to like a 5, maybe.
Yeah, that's it. Cancel it.
Can't cancel. Yeah.
Yeah, it was great seeing Mojo. I also have a soft spot for Mojo. He's a ton of fun, and we get to see Spiral, who's so cool.
Yeah.
Mojo is the one character who, like, if I could have like 10 minutes in a room with Kevin Feige and just like toss ideas to him, those ideas would be very Mojo and Kingpin. It would be those two things.
Yeah. We didn't get Longshot though, did we? We sort of had reference to Dazzler, but they really. But I guess it was good because we got that stuff of they got name dropped and stuff, or at least Dazzler did sort of thing. But then we got to sort of actually have some character development with Jubilee and Sunspot, and it was cool to have that Jubilee, future Jubilee or whatever she was. I forget what her name is. That was got cool.
A different name. Like Arcissa or something like that. But it was the old Jubilee actor. Doing her voice, which was a nice, sweet little touch.
Yeah. So that was cool. I just wish it hadn't have been. I mean, I don't know how much more they would have stretched that one out, but But I'll come back to that thing about the Storm thing later, I think. But just that was just a bit like, but it wasn't too bad. I didn't mind it, sort of thing. But I think what about? That brings us to episode 5. Do you want to?
That's the one that you can skip, 5? From what I heard.
Yeah, right. I mean, what they do, like, I can't believe they did that to my favorite character. and by the way, spoilers. I suppose we should have said that at the outset, right? But
spoilers, everybody.
I can't believe they took out Leech. Like. What did Leech do to anyone? He was a poor little kid. he was such a cool character. But yeah, man, that was an amazing episode. That was like just so many emotional moments, and they really like that one. I think a lot of the stuff that they'd set up from the beginning of the series paid off. Like especially with Gambit and Rogue and all that sort of stuff, and Magneto, like they really allowed that to take its time to get to that point to make that so much more sort of impactful sort of thing. Yeah. What did you think of episode 5?
Oh boy, it was. I mean, there was a point where I think it was when they got to the gala, and Rogue shows up in her dress, and everybody's having a good time at this gala. And I remember sitting back thinking, this episode has been extremely good. Like, I've been loving it, and I don't think a single character has even thrown a punch. Like, it's just been drama, and I've been loving it. And I was all there for the ride. I'm like, yeah, if this is just the drama, I'm here for it. Cool. And then the Sentinel shows up, and I'm like, and I mean, I've always flip-flopped. Beast and Rogue have always been my favorite X-Men, and they've kind of flip-flopped and vied for first place. And to see this happen, this ending happen, where Gambit, who's obviously a great, awesome character too, like to have him have that big finish, that big emotional finish, knowing that he died sort of accepting that the love of his life is no longer within his reach, kind of thing. And then to have that moment with Rogue just crying over a black screen as she's touching his face, I'm just like, what would young me say right now?
Yeah, it was. It's like you said, it's like it really showed how the show has, because X-Men always, even back in that thing, X-Men, one of the things about them was it was always soap opera-y, but it was always real themes. It was tackling themes almost sort of a bit ahead of its time and that sort of thing. And they were these mature themes in these comics, but this, the old cartoon probably still handled a lot of it in a very kid-friendly sort of way. And this certainly wasn't it. This certainly was really allowed the full emotional, adult impact, all the implications be right there sort of for us in this season sort of thing. And with the way that they did that scene, where she's crying and like, I can't feel you, like, whew, like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, like,
and then there's so many little moments too that we tend to forget because of how powerful that ending was. But things like Cyclops emotionally cheating on Jean, like there's a lot to unpack there. One of the best quotes I think I've ever heard from any cartoon is Magneto talking to that lady, and she says, they won't let a terrorist be a leader, and yet you let so many of your leaders be terrorists. That, I'm just like, oh my god, like, can we spend the whole episode talking about that quote? Like, there's so much there.
Yeah, which is back to your point about, like, if that episode had just been the gala and the politics and the and those really making those points, like, that's enough. Like, that's such great television there in itself, sort of thing, and yeah, so that it was really good, and like, again, like really, like, letting Magneto shine, and like, him dying in the way that he died. Like, I'm assuming he died as well, right? That's like how I read that.
Yeah.
like just what a great arc for that character, like, from the beginning of the season sort of thing. Like, that's just been, and I guess it doesn't just start from the beginning of the season for him. It's like, right back sort of thing. And but like, and the Cyclops Jean stuff, like, I mean, some of it's funny, right? Like, like Jean, like, literally a split second ago, initiated a kiss with Logan and blah blah blah, all that sort of stuff, and then she's the one going, "Oh, how could you, you horrible person," to, like, Cyclops and stuff. And but as funny as that is, it's like that's a real, like, interesting and nuanced sort of like look at their relationship, and that's I think comes from the comics as well. I think, although it was maybe with Emma Frost or something, and
Right.
but yeah, like that. But what an interesting thing to have like that. He's having that sort of almost like an affair with Madeline Pryor, but psychic. Like, well, that's just an interesting thing too. Like, is that crossing the boundaries? Now, I can't remember what was happening in that, but like, was he only sort of just like talking to her, and they were like talking about the baby and that sort of stuff? Like,
yeah,
that's all they were
exactly.
doing, right? But it's still that whole thing of like, well, that's kind of like chatting to your ex on Facebook. Like, it's like what constitutes as being faithful and all. It's just like, what a really interesting place to go with it, and yeah, so and it showing like Cyclops, like buckling under the strain and lashing out in that interview, and saying, oh, you'd all be dead if it wasn't for us, and blah blah blah, like, yeah, so like just great character moments, great themes being explored. It's just really such a powerful episode, and I think like, not to rush like the conversation and get to, but like, I think this sort of comes back to this thing where the season hasn't been perfect for me, is that like the next episode was really jarring. Like, I couldn't care less. Like, as much as like I like, I like that they exist and it's sort of fun. The what are they? The Shi'ar characters and that whole thing of with what's his name? Ben Stiller in space.
Corsair.
Corsair.
Yeah.
All those guys, like, cool, but it just felt to me like it just going from that uh, that ending and that episode and all the themes being discussed there and that episode, and then shifting completely to like almost solely focusing on him, and then also jumping back to that episode that they'd kind of left, that Storms episode and her thing. It just felt like I wanted to see I just wanted to keep exploring what and the ramifications of that. And I sort of get that I guess they had to sort of, they needed to bring everyone else back up to speed with what had happened with the previous episode, but it just felt like, and I don't know, as a showrunner, how you would do it differently, but it just, that whole episode, I was just like, I don't care. Like, show me the fallout of what's happening with like back at the mansion, and how they're dealing with, and supporting Rogue, all that's like, I was like, I don't care. Like, and I think the Shi'ar stuff especially felt jarring, because it was like they were so ridiculous characters and such a I don't know, like it just totally felt like a different show sort of thing. It went back to feeling like that, I don't know, it just it I don't know. I know they were I guess they were trying to, maybe I need to rewatch it, but they were trying to cover some big themes. Professor X was, trying to challenge this very awful Shi'ar sort of ethos and all this sort of stuff, but it didn't hit for me. I was just like, come on. And the same thing with like Storm was like, that was a story I was interested in, like her journey of how she comes back from what happened to her. But I would have maybe preferred that being its own episode, maybe together with that other half an episode we got of that earlier, maybe, or something like that. And yeah, like, I don't know, it just, and I think this is an interesting thing. So, and I want to sort of hear your thoughts and stuff as well, but I think, because it ties to what I'm sort of thinking about, is I've seen a lot of discussion online about different shows and the model of how we watch the shows, and everyone's like, I shouldn't say everyone, that's a very that's a very like clickbaity title. Everyone says, everyone says, but like there's been this discussion about how we drop the episodes, like the binging model or the one per week sort of thing, and I think, like, so people saying, this is proof, this is absolute proof that we should be dropping them one per episodes, sort of, one episode per week, and because now we've had all week to like, talk around the water cooler about what a great episode and all the themes of episode 5 and what a big impact that had on us. And if we just binged it all in one night, no one would be talking about that episode, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
And, I shouldn't say blah, blah, blah and be dismissive. That I think I actually sort of agree with it. I think it's a very impressive point. But I think the flip side is, for me at least, because if you really enjoyed that episode 6 and it wasn't jarring, that's fine. But like for me, that episode dropping and now being like, okay, well, that was disappointing, and now I've got to wait an entire week to like get some follow up on what just happened in episode 5. I'm like, like come on, like it's lessened my enthusiasm for the show, and it sort of felt the same way when I watched episode 3 and when I watched even though I got to kind of enjoy that little one, that episode 4 with the Jubilee thing, I was kind of like, okay, that was a cool little filler episode, but I want more. I want to get back to the main storylines, and like having to wait a whole week when they just drop like a little filler episode is kind of frustrating, which is funny because we've talked about how we should be grateful, right? Because we grew up where we were lucky to find an episode at the right time and be home, and but that for me was sort of frustrating, and so I think, I wonder I don't know if they dropped all of it at once, what the ups and downs and stuff, would I have felt the same way about episode 6 that I felt. But that was and one last thing about episode 6, I don't understand how first of all, I don't understand how Storm got her powers back, like apart from the power of trying hard or something. I'm not sure what the how she got them back, but more importantly, I don't understand how her getting her powers back allowed her to create clothes around herself, and
That's true.
what was that? She's like, I'm going to get my powers back and grow some like nanobot clothes. Like, where did the clothes come from? I don't understand what happened. Like, metaphorically, it's a metamorphosis, and she's gone from Gandalf the Grey to Gandalf the White or whatever. But like, I don't understand how that happened.
I guess Dave is saying in the chat here, it's Forge's device finally working. I guess that's what it is. That makes sense. That absolutely makes the most sense. Yeah, because Forge was trying to help her out.
Okay. See, I should have been paying more attention to that and not being so grumbly about. I was probably sitting there going, come on, where's
yeah, you're probably thinking like, where's Rogue, which is totally fine.
yeah, where's Gambit's funeral?
Yeah.
I got to. Okay, so I think the moral is I need to go back and watch some of those episodes to like pay attention. Right. Okay. So yeah, and I didn't really understand who that adversary guy was either. So
yeah, that's a character I wasn't familiar with. I figured he's just very similar to like the Shadow King in terms of what
I thought he was the Shadow King or something. Yeah. Anyway, so I went on a big rant there, so I apologize.
No, it's all good.
Open the floor to you.
It's true. I can totally see how that episode would jar a lot of folks, coming on the heels of this childhood shattering event here.
Like Transformers level, right? It's like, no.
I mean, I guess it was intended to be a sort of breathing room in a way.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't have a ton of experience when it comes to TV writing, because that's a very different animal. But with novels, I tend to look at it as like a roller coaster kind of thing, where if the whole thing is you going down a hill, the thrill of that starts to get old pretty fast. So you want those dips and valleys to kind of get you there, so that when you start cresting another hill again, your readers are like, ooh, something's happening. So I feel like this might have just been sort of the TV equivalent of that, of getting these chess pieces in place for the fallout. Because what's the beauty of this is that we know Storm is going to rush to the X-Men now. And now we'll know she has seen what's happened on the news, and now she'll have her powers. So it gives us a sort of closure on the whole Storm storyline. And hopefully she'll bring Forge with her, because Forge is cool. We want to see him with the team. And the same thing with Professor X, who up until this point, we were not sure we were ever going to see again. So it's kind of the same deal where we see what he's going through, and then getting that moment of him going, oh, something just happened. I guess I gotta bounce. Sorry, bird people, I'm gone.
Yeah.
And I do love the whole Shi'ar stuff, like all that, the cosmic Marvel stuff, Ben Stiller in space. I love that stuff. It is very tangential to what's happening right now.
Yeah.
But it does, to me, personify a lot of, like, I think of that Ben Stiller character and I think of the X-Men cartoons. So seeing these space plot lines come out, it doesn't feel like it's coming out of left field. And it does give me a good reason to be like, oh, Charles is back, and it won't feel, because otherwise it would feel forced if he just shows up. He's like, I'm back. I have divorced Lalandra and I'm back. So I'm glad we got this moment to kind of do that. And keep the stakes high by not showing Genosha until we're ready.
Yeah, and I think and you're totally right. And it's like how do they, because you could see by the end of that episode, they'd set it up for both those major characters to return and all that sort of stuff. But like, I guess it's like, how do you do that without it being a little bit sort of like, well, taking focus away from what was happening? Yeah, and like you said, it's probably important that they did do that to give us that sort of breath, and then down and up, up again, and I guess that's what it was kind of like, with episodes. Maybe not 3, because 3 was pretty full on, but like episode 4 sort of thing was a bit of a chance to sort of recalibrate before that big powerful episode 5 sort of thing. And I just wonder, maybe personally for me, if I'd been able to like handle it better, if I'd been able to like just blitz through that one in a binging session and then watch, like, say, episode, what are we up to, 7 or something?
7 will be coming up this week.
And then just like get straight in. Like, I wonder if I would have like found it less frustrating. I think probably the biggest thing is, I'm like, as someone who's like really enjoys binging, having to get used to this like one a week sort of thing is tough. So I just need to get some patience, I think. So
and it does help recreate that feeling of being a kid.
Yes,
right? Even though I think the way they would air it back then was, at least maybe with Spider-Man, it was like this, but wasn't it on every day after school, or am I remembering?
Yeah, I feel like it was like school, like, I think it was like one of those things. It was like either before or after school. It was on one of those. Did you used to have like programs that would show a bunch of kids shows in one hit sort of thing? Like we used to have like the Cheese TV or Agro's Cartoon Connection or different things, and oh man, Agro's Cartoon. I'm getting flashbacks of inappropriate puppet. Anyway, so that I think you're right. Like, I think so for me, it hasn't, like, I've had these moments of annoyance, but it's not necessarily a reflection of anything wrong with the show. It's just I've got to just adjust my expectations or something, I guess. Yeah. But,
maybe
if I'm just being honest.
Put yourself back in that 90s mindset.
Yeah.
We have changed as people and as TV viewers. So some of that is kind of, we have to, like Yoda says, kind of unlearn what we learned a little bit and go back to these simpler times, even though the stories are anything but simple. So now we have 4 episodes left of this, and the creators have already said they are like ready and frothing at the mouth to do another season. So do you have any like hopes and dreams and aspirations for what the future of X-Men 97 might hold?
I mean, it's funny, because part of it is I kind of already had some ideas of what's going to happen in this season, because they dropped like the titles of the episodes. The problem with that is I've forgotten the names of the last few episodes, so I can't remember what actually is going to happen. But I'm trying to think. Like, I'm guessing we're going to get, and I always have liked Sinister as a character, so I'm guessing there's it seems like you would have Sinister be some sort of, because he seems like he's going to have something to do with this next like conclusion to the the series sort of thing. It seems like he's kind of like pulling some of the strings behind some of what's going on. Although some other people on the net have been referencing characters who I have really no idea what they do in the comics, like someone called Cassandra and Bastion and stuff. So I don't know if they're tied to what's going on with Sinister or not or whatever. So I imagine there's some stuff going on there. But for me, what I would love to see as a X Factor guy, since they've shown little hints of like, you had multiple man. Hopefully at least some of his clones survive some of that blast. But like you saw that photo, I think on Forge's shelf of like the X Factor team.
Yeah.
Because X Factor were in like one episode or something where I think Forge was leading them in the original TVC. So I'd love to see some storylines with them. Since we've had those hints of Cable and stuff, I would, just as a fan of that sort of stuff, I'd love to see them go into the what do you call that? The Executioner song. That whole storyline with Cable and Charles. Although I think they've had enough. They've done a few like assassinating Charles Xavier storylines already in the previous animated series. That, like, I don't know if that's the best one to go with, because they've already explored that, like what happens when you kill him and blah 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 blah. But the fact that they've sort of got Cable and they've introduced Madeline Pryor and all that sort of stuff, it kind of sets up for the whole thing of like, well, Cable is, I forget exactly who, no, not Cable, Strife. Like, I forget how Strife ties in with the whole Madeline Pryor and Jean Grey and Sinister making clones of them and the babies and blah blah blah. I think like Dave will be able to tell us. Like Strife is like the clone baby of one of them or something like that. So like, there's that whole thing. I'd like to see that. But what I think would be, I don't know if I necessarily want to see it, because I don't know if I necessarily agree with the whole. Like I don't like. I like some of it and I don't love it, because to me, like, X-Men, this is the thing, right? X-Men lives in my mind as the X-Men living in the mansion, wearing their bright colors. For whatever few episodes I collected that year, that's like the X-Men. And so to know that there's been all this progression and all this stuff where like Beast turns evil and they turn into wood elves and live on Living Tree Island, magical happy land, and have parties and stuff, like, and then all different stuff happens and everyone becomes friends, and like, to me it's like, that's not the X-Men. That's but that is the X-Men. That's been the X-Men for the last 20 years or 30 years or whatever, however long it's been going. So as much as I'm like, oh, I'd love to keep the X-Men being in its own box, and like if this animated series 97 isn't just to redo the old animated series, it's to progress the story. And so really more interestingly would be, like, do they start delving into like the Krakoa era where the mutants get their own island and all this sort of stuff. Plus I think there's like 20 years of X-Men before Krakoa that I have no idea what was happening, and half of them turn into Phoenix Force people and all this sort of other stuff. So like, I'm kind of excited to see how, like, what they decide to do with, are they going to adapt a lot of these, like how much are they going to stay in the era of that sort of like 90s X-Men, and how much are they going to like delve into like what's come afterwards and the different eras of X-Men. So like, it's one of those things, it's like, I'm not sure I want to see it, but like that's the most interesting thing, right? That makes sense to sort of explore and to modernize them, take them from like that nostalgia hit, like, that they perfectly hit us with the nostalgia, and then like, do they take us through all that modern stuff? I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, they might end up, I think that's a great thing for them to end up doing, is tackling the modern stories, and they can tackle it while keeping the 90s nostalgic look and feel of the characters. And then you can kind of get to have it both ways. And get some of the, because I'm sure that there's a lot of modern stories that kind of blow some of the old stories out of the water that a lot of fans are probably really anxious to see. Like, I know, again, I'm not a guy who's read the comics, so I don't know much about them, but I know something like House of M was a huge deal. And I think Scarlet Witch kills like almost every mutant in the world except for like 100 of them or something. And now there's something called House of X that Dave is talking
House
about.
House of X, yeah.
So there's all these big events that I'm sure fans want to see, and getting to see them adapted, not necessarily beat for beat like we saw with Madeline Pryor, but adapted to fit the 90s universe. I think that'd be beautiful. In my perfect world, this is me being selfish, but in my perfect world,
hey, that's what we're here for,
right? This is just selfishness all around. The idea of, because like I can't stress enough how much it brought joy to my little young brain as a kid when I learned that the Spider-Man and the X-Men cartoon were part of the same world, and then there was a Hulk cartoon and a Fantastic Four cartoon as well. And then, you know, I never got to see that come to the fruition that my imagination hoped it would until the MCU came along and started doing it. Now we've gone back to this animated world, and I can't help but think, am I finally going to get my wish in animation? Are we going to see Spider-Man show up on the show? And then are we going to get a Spider-Man 97 show and then an Incredible Hulk 97 show? And honestly, man, if that happens, I think that would be like, there is no more of a dream come true for this guy than if that were to happen. That's part and parcel of why I love Marvel United so much, is because visually it looks like the 90s cartoons, and I get all those characters as a toy box, and I get to kind of make my own stories with them through this fun little game system. So if they take that show that originally sparked that love in me and actually bring it to life with modern storytelling methods, but keeping it looking the same, like imagine that Spider-Man cartoon carries on and we get to see the whole story of the Scarlet Spider. And then he can hang out with Madeline Pryor, and they can be like, man, being a clone sucks, huh? And then we could even see Miles Morales, who didn't even exist back then, but have him be adapted into this 90s cartoon world. And it's just, the possibilities are endless. And I think that it could be this beautiful, gargantuan mini empire that Marvel could build for itself with its animated universe that could even rival the movies if they do it right. Because that's what I told Ryan on our last podcast. Ryan has this great motto, because he grew up on a lot of these cartoons too, and they're his like lifeblood. And he says, you know, when a Marvel movie comes out or a DC movie comes out and they tackle a storyline and it's like the cartoon did it better 15 years ago, it's like, what are you doing? You're professional movie makers, and the cartoon should never be doing it better. And I told him after this episode 5 here of X-Men 97, I said, Ryan, I don't envy who has to handle this MCU X-Men that we're eventually going to get, because how are they going to make a movie that resonates more powerfully than what we just saw in episode 5?
Well, I think I think you are in luck, because like we've seen, I think in the trailer for this next episode, like we see Captain America's shield like hitting the dirt or whatever, right? So we know he's probably going to be in it, right? If not the Avengers, him, right? So I think similar to like when we saw Deceased is announced, I think the writing's on the wall there that like, okay, so we know there's going to be some crossover, and seeing how popular this has hit and trying to get some sort of spark back into the MCU, and because there's a lot of negativity around it at the moment and that sort of stuff. Like I could definitely see them capitalizing on like, all right, yep, let's line it up, especially because they, I shouldn't say movie studios, but like the entertainment industry loves sort of cashing in on something that they see as hot, sort of thing. So, like I can definitely see, a Spider-Man 97, Avengers 9, you know what I mean? Avengers 97, all that sort of stuff. I just like, it's almost like a inevitability sort of thing. I think that's definitely going to happen. And I was thinking as well, thinking about what would we love to see. Another thing I would like to see would be, as much as I sort of didn't really follow it and didn't really like the idea of it when it first arrived back in the day, is the Age of Apocalypse stuff. I think that'd be really interesting. Like you could do like a season or something, or a half season on that, where they tackle like that sort of alternate reality where, again, I think Professor X dies in that one to trigger it to me. And sort of spend a season or so with those guys and investigate because there's some really interesting themes in that could be explored with this new sort of modern viewpoint from it and that sort of thing as well. So that'd be really interesting as well. I think that'd be cool. But yeah, definitely like Avengers and Spider-Man for sure would be the top two sort of thing. And I wonder if that's like a way they could revive the fortunes of like the Inhumans and stuff like that, like.
Yeah, good point. And I mean, it would be kind of, I know a lot of people want it, but I feel, just me personally, I feel it would be kind of cheap to bring back Iron Man and Captain America to the movies.
Oh, yeah.
Next best thing, get them back in these cartoons, and you're golden.
Yeah. I think, me too. Although, like, I agree. I kind of think, oh man, with this multiverse thing, it's only a matter of time before they do it, right?
Yeah.
But and it's and it's the same with the comics, right? Everyone comes back, like, yeah, I think that'd be good. That'd be a good direction for, like, just sort of, who is it? Disney, I guess. Disney and Marvel to go in to sort of like really capitalize. I think that'd be good. Dave's mentioning his Marvel United '97. So yeah, we've had a big chat about that already, Dave. we like the idea. Hopefully we see something come to fruition there. Recent Eternals comic. Oh, so there's a recent Eternals run or something of comics.
Apparently it was a good comic. Yeah, like there's so much that they could throw into this animated universe, and like the foundation is there, because those 6 cartoons that the 90s gave us, they threw a lot of characters at us, especially X-Men, because there were so many episodes. So like, I mean, I'm pretty sure at one point in these cartoons, Beta Ray Bill showed up, maybe, like that's how deep cut it was getting. So the sky's the limit.
We need brute force, I think.
Brute force.
To get those guys in.
They just had a Cameron Hodge back.
Yes. Oh, yes. Although, as much as I love the version of Cameron Hodge that I did, I think, actually, you know what? I think they did. I think in the comics, in the animated season, I think they did his, like, where he's all like mutified by that alien. What's that
Warlock? Yeah.
I think they did. I think they featured him in that, like, it would have been like, maybe season 3 or 4 or something like that, and they sort of had one of those kind of short episodes, I think, sort of or short arcs or whatever, and I think he was already in his like weird, gross, scary looking phase. But yeah, bringing him back, sort of, that'd be cool, sort of thing. Yeah, I think that'd be the way to go with him.
If we're looking down the barrel of a Marvel animated universe renaissance, then I could not be happier about that. That is worth the price of Disney Plus alone. Just that.
Yeah.
They could stop making Star Wars. They could stop everything. That would be like, I would never leave my couch. If there was like a new episode every day, like one from each series, I'd never go outside.
It's and it, like, but they're doing it well, right? They've it's one of those things. It's like, eventually, things sort of fall apart and stuff. But at the moment, they whatever recipe they seem to be cooking with who they've got for that show and stuff, they seem to know how to do a good animated show at the moment. So yeah, while you've got that ability in the writing room or whatever it is, and the animation and stuff, like, cash in on it, I think.
And like Dave is saying here, animation has to be cheaper than the movies, right? Like, so there's so many reasons to do it. I hope we get that wish, man. I hope we get that.
Yeah.
All those wishes come true. It's only a matter of time, I hope. I know these cartoons take long to make. But
yeah, I
worth the
think
wait.
yeah, like like we've seen that Shields. I think its chances are pretty good. But I did see something that the writers were talking about. Their dream sort of follow up would be to do like a big a movie, X-Men animated movie sort of thing.
Ooh.
And a couple of things about that. I'm like, oh yeah, but like the beauty of what you got, the medium that you're doing in TV is that you can tell these really long. I know there's movies allow you to do certain things in storytelling and stuff as well, but I really like you can sort of space things out over these seasons and stuff. But the other thing is they mentioned, I think they referenced like, oh, we'd love to do it like Akira style. And I just remember thinking that'd be really weird if like Cyclops like arm just like grows really big and like turns into this like, massive like flesh monster sort of thing. It's like
Yeah, hopefully it's a bit more coherent than Akira.
yeah, like that doesn't. Why reference Akira? But yeah, I get what I mean. Like big sort of big event sort of movie sort of thing. Big cultural touchstone sort of thing. Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, that'd be cool too. Like, so, but that'd be great. If we maybe even in the movie world we start getting more of the animations and that sort of stuff. But I don't know. I think I'd prefer if they stuck to I guess if it's a choice of one or the other, I think I'd prefer they stuck to the TV series sort of thing. But if we get both, hey, that's great too.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I guess time will tell. We'll see what happens. And in the meantime, we've got 4 episodes left of this show to look forward to.
Yeah, and whatever they do, they got to bring out some characters that we can base a Marvel United season around.
Exactly. Cool. That's all we ask. Just enough to get a season 4 sparking out, right? If that core box is like Dave says, Marvel United 97, and it's that mishmash of like X-Men and Avengers heroes just redone in a 97 way, sold. As long as we got a big campaign that has Prowler and Whirlwind and Mandarin in it, and yeah. And Mephisto, we got to stop pretending Mephisto doesn't exist. He's got to be Well, until then, we can dream, right?
That's right. Dreaming. That's right. Keep dreaming, and we'll keep homebrewing. We'll keep homebrewing for Marvel United. We'll just make our own stuff. So.
Exactly. Well, speaking of which, Meeple Monkey, where can people find you if they want to watch your videos, all your awesome homebrew and gameplay videos that you have going on?
Well, the YouTube channel is the Meeple Monkey, I believe I've called it. So the Meeple Monkey, lots of Marvel United gameplay. Certainly lent into a lot of homebrew stuff, like showing off different design. I try to sort of showcase different designers' homebrew stuff as well. For Marvel United, I also do unboxings occasionally, although I'm not kickstarting as much now, so I don't really have as much stuff coming into unbox. But also doing other gameplay. So I've delved into some other games like Tamashii and Black Rose Wars, and I have coming out soon, hopefully in the next week or so. I've done a little like top 5, sort of like showing off some of my collection, and also like doing a top 5 of a certain sort of genre of games sort of thing. So
nice.
I'm sort of experimenting with it, seeing if I can make a video that's half watchable sort of thing, and see if people like it sort of thing. So but mainly if you come into the Meeple Monkey channel, you're pretty much going to find Marvel United content for the most part. So lots of good stuff there. Also got the Meeple Monkey Facebook community page with about 10 members. But that's a great little community of people, really, really friendly guys and girls. And like main thing I guess we do there is we showcase different paint jobs we're doing with Marvel United and that sort of thing. But really, if you just want to come and have a chat and post whatever you like, that's fine as well. And we're going to be my plan is to take your video where you did the DC United season 1, your hypothetical, and make some bingo cards for all the members in that Facebook page, and we'll play DC United bingo, and every time they announce like a new character that's on your list, we'll be like tick, sort of thing. So
I can't wait. I can't wait.
Yeah. We're just Dave gave us a good idea. We're going to wait till they announce. Hopefully they'll announce the the core box, you know, a little bit early on or something like that, so we know who's in the core box.
Right.
And then we'll use those characters as like free spaces in the middle of the grid, sort of thing, and then have all your deep cuts around the outside, sort of thing. So
yeah,
so
we'll see what happens. We'll see how off the mark I was.
Yeah.
I think I had Cheetah in the core box, and that was a mistake. I'm constantly overestimating the power of Cheetah.
You never know. As long as she's in the promos, we're all good. We're all good.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also, I should point out, people, I highly recommend checking out the Marvel United Discord. If you're into Marvel United, highly recommend checking out the Marvel United wiki. Great resource if you like that game. And also there's a homebrew section to that page where lots of great folks have been posting up some really cool designs for different heroes and things like that. So and we've been playing through a homebrew campaign that Dave created based on the animated series that the old one that we've been playing through, and that's been a lot of fun. So I've got a poll up at the moment for what could be the finale. If we win this next battle, that'll probably be like the end of that campaign, sort of thing. So yeah, so that's been a lot of fun. So you can check out the last few videos have been based on that too. So yeah, and always designing more stuff. I've got been doing a lot of Dynasty Warriors stuff recently, and just came up with my first Samurai Warriors villain for that one. So
awesome.
Haven't play tested it yet, but I've sort of like it was all in my head last night, so I was like quickly trying to like put it together on a digital format so I can start putting it into TTS and try it out, sort of thing. So yeah, very
perfect.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to trying out the campaign that
it's a good one
for the X-Men cartoon. When I get season 3, I'm going to try it out because there's a lot of characters from season 1 of X-Men that will show up in that, like from what I've seen in the campaign, or even some of the locations that he chose are specific season 3. So I can't wait to try that. And I'll have an Apocalypse when season 3 comes, so I'll be able to use into the Apocalypse storyline. So it'll be cool to play those and try it out.
Yeah. And it's a good little one because there's that really great map campaign that I think a guy named Dom made, which is really great. But this one's like if you want to do a little campaign that's a little bit less of a over time, you don't have to sort of play as many games in a row to complete it. This one's a more condensed sort of campaign sort of thing. So it's a good little bite-sized chunk sort of one that you can play, sort of thing. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and the detail that he put into it is great. There's so much context to everything, which I love.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Great place to learn more about the storylines and stuff. He's put in all these references and links to like, not links, but like references to what comic issues you could read and what episodes in the series that it ties to. And then, very cool.
Nice. Well, so the coming months, we have a lot. United fans have a lot to keep us occupied until that glorious knock on our door when we get some giant boxes full of stuff. Until then, we'll just keep making videos and keep making the wait for season 3 a little bit shorter, a whole lot sweeter, we hope. Anyway, but we'll see you all next time. Meeple Monkey, thank you so much, my friend, for coming on and having this wonderful chat again. Yeah, it's been great, man. It's like there's so much that's happened since the last time we talked, so I'm glad we got this chance to catch up and go over all our thoughts and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. We might have to catch up a little bit down the trail when the season is finished, sort of thing, and we can sort of like share our thoughts and see if our opinions have changed and stuff.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. All right. So until then, everybody, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you all here for whatever comes next in the master plan.
Meeple Monkey out.